support from the minority party for either option, that makes passage on the floor look a little questionable for either approach. But I think this is the most straightforward way to go to solve the problem that we are, as Mr. Vaught said, broke, and yet we need to be concerned about our contributions to the pension systems.
Yeah, you kind of anticipated my next question. With the lack of Republican support that you mentioned, what are you going to do to either try to get it or try to get something that does not need Republican support?
Well, we would prefer to go the bonding route, and we will certainly work to get at least a vote or two or four from the members of the minority party. If not, we have other problems that we can address. If not, we will find other ways to address the shortfall. But I think the preferred way is to go to bond, as we have done in the past.
When do you think you'll be calling the full vote?
I'm not sure. Well, sometime soon. I mean, it's Wednesday, and I think we're planning to be out of here on Saturday, or unless it's Friday. Or as Senate President Cullerton said, maybe even as soon as Thursday. So I'm raring to go.
I mean, so is the idea to pass both of these bills to the governor's desk?
I need to double check on that, because I think that if one of them is likelier to pass, that's the one we'll call. If both of them have a shot, then we may want to do both, so that there is the opportunity to check to see if the private placement meets with IRS approval.
If the Republican support is not there, then what is the option?
Then we're gonna have to scuttle about and figure out what our other options might be.
Can you explain it?
Cuts to make up the difference?
That's possible, but those are very difficult to do, of course. And other options are, well, we'll go back to the drawing boards.
Can you explain again the private placement option? This seems to be fairly innovative.
This is something that is relatively new to me. I'm not much in the way of finance, but I guess the idea is that maybe it would be cheaper to do half of the borrowing through this private placement proposal than it would be just to go to the bond market as we ordinarily do. That's the theory. Now, I don't know enough about this to know if it really works. My guess is someone from the governor's office who works in finance would be the best person to address that question too.
But you don't feel as if this kind of new approach would be putting in jeopardy the pensions at all, given all that was done this
Not at all.
year?
Not at all. Not at all. No, the only question is whether it meets with IRS approval. These bonds would be rated. They would be regulated. There is no risk to the system. The only risk, in my view, would be the question whether there is something in the tax code that would prevent this particular approach.
Where do the other factors stand in trying to wrap up the budget at this point?
Well, the budget itself and what authority the governor is given to manage resources. Yeah, I mean,
are
those.
Any of the smaller tax increases he's talked about still on the table, on the consideration?
Like which ones?
Like the canned software tax.
I think those are all off the table. I don't think any of those is on the table.
What about the cigarette tax?
I'm sorry, that one I think is on the table. That was not something that the governor has recently proposed. It's a bill that passed the Senate last year. And Senate Bill 44, we believe, could bring in about $320 million, which I think would be very useful in terms of meeting some of our difficult fiscal times. So I'm hopeful that before we finish this session, we'll find those few additional votes we need in order to pass that bill.
Is securitization still on?
Maybe I've not been focused on the securitization discussion.
44 is the smoke tax?
That's the $1 increase in the cigarette tax, yes. And we anticipate, given that there will be some drop-off in smoking, which of course is one of the reasons why it's a good thing to do, particularly among youth who are less likely to start smoking, the public health benefit is great, but nevertheless we think it still would bring in about $320 million.
Do you smoke?
No.
From what I understand, it's a very hard habit to kick. And boy, that extra $1, I mean, I'm sure that comes decision time for a lot of people.
Well, and the hope would be that a lot of people will decide this is the kick I need to give up that habit.
The governor said he doesn't support a tax amnesty program in the past. Has that changed now? That
This was the governor's proposal. This was the, no, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I think this idea actually came from the Senate president, but my understanding is that the governor's office supports it.
So looking at kind of cigarette tax, amnesty,
Pension,
kind of all
bonds,
of this.
pension bonds, yeah, all of these things are part of a final budget mix, and we'll see where we go.
How much are you
Back to
looking
the
for
floor.
these smaller measures to bring in? Is there
Well,
a figure for that?
the $4 billion is basically what the bonding would do, and as I said, the cigarette taxes may be worth 320. Sorry, I misspoke. We think the tax amnesty with the other opportunities to negotiate old debt could bring in about $250 million this year. So things are adding up, but we face, as we know, a very difficult budget problem.
Is putting off payments to vendors being considered as part of this mix? Or?
Well, we already have done some of that. We're going to end up with the beginning of the new fiscal year with $6 billion in unpaid debt. So we have serious problems, and going forward, we need to figure out ways to address them and not to make the kinds of cuts that are so deep that vulnerable, fragile populations who depend upon the state for sustenance are left out in the cold. So whether it's children who are victims of abuse and neglect, or people who are mentally ill and need community services, or seniors who need help to stay in their homes, to stay independent and out of the nursing home, school kids who depend upon state resources in order to help level the playing field from low-income communities to high. All of these are important responsibilities for the people of the state of Illinois, and it's my hope that we'll step up to the plate and do as good a job as we can to see to it that we meet those responsibilities.
What about the money that we do owe? Are you looking at extending the lapse period at all, or
If-
is that
if-
still on the table?
That's a possibility, but I mean that's only a way of saying that additional monies that we incur as responsibilities we will be able to pay from the current fiscal year budget. That doesn't help us pay the $6 billion we're going to be owing.
Is it ironic at all that the state's worrying about this lapse period spend, or that the state is looking to tax amnesty and to collect on old debts when the state itself is kind of a debtor?
A deadbeat?
Yeah.
Is that what you're calling us, the state of Illinois deadbeat state? I think that goes a little far, but yes, it is fair to say that balancing the budgets on the backs of our vendors is not a very attractive, not a very pleasant way to go, and the governor has proposed some short-term borrowing. The argument is that we could borrow from the bank at a lot lower an interest rate than the vendors can cope with the debt that we owe them. And at the same time, at the end of the day, we owe vendors, many vendors at least, we owe them interest. And the interest rate can be as much as 12% a year. So going to a bank for 1 to 2% interest rates is a whole lot better from a fiscal perspective than is continuing to owe these people. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.